Hey guys, this is Alan from Queen Creek Tropicals, and in today's episode we are busting a myth, gardening myth, and that is transplant shock. Anytime that you transplant your plant into a new container or into the ground and it dies, it's transplant shock. Now, I'll be honest with you guys, we pot at least 2,000 plants a year in containers, and I can count in one single hand how many of those plants literally die from transplant shock. Now today I'm going to give you 4 reasons why your trees die right after you pot them or you put them in the ground. Now let's get to it. Reason number 1, that is going to be physical damage to the root system. When you take a container, any plant like this one right here, and then you put it into a bigger container, now the main mistake people make is they destroy the root system when taking this plant out of that container and putting it in a different container or into the ground. Physical damage to the root system means you damage the root system. So what's going to happen is, as soon as you cut the roots of that plant, your plant is going to wilt. This process will take a matter of minutes, not hours, not days, guys. It will happen within minutes of you moving it from one container into another or into the ground. Now, is your plant going to die? Well, think about it. It depends on how much damage you cause to that root system. The reason your plant is wilting is because the root system supporting that big canopy is no longer there. So there's no water going up into the foliage, the branches. Now what's going to happen is everything's going to wilt. So your plant goes into survival mode. It's going to try to kill everything off that is not vital, so that way the main trunk survives. Most times you're only going to lose your leaves and your plant will recover. It will take a few months, and no amount of B1, worm poop, or any other special juices you put in that soil will make it come back faster. It's just going to take time. Now sometimes your plant is not going to make it. It's just the way it works. It's your fault. You damage the root system and you technically kill your plant. Think about it. If somebody chop your arms and your legs off, do you think you will make it? Well, most people will not. Some people will. And that's exactly what you did to your plant when you destroyed the root system. Now let's go and talk about reason number 2. That is chemical damage to the root system. This is very similar to reason number 1. But now the difference is going to be you put something in the soil or you spray your plant with something right after you potted it or you put it in the ground. So that's something that you put in the soil or in the ground damage the root system of your plant. Too much fertilizer, too much of something. Somebody came around your house and sprayed a weed killer around your plants, or something happened. Now this usually will take a few hours to a few days to show, and the signs are going to be very similar to reason number 1. Your leaves are gonna wilt and then your plant is gonna look dead. Now, is your plant going to make it or not? Well, that depends on what actually caused that plant to take damage. So if it was too much fertilizer and then you started flushing the soil, well, then you may have saved your plant. But now you have to understand, whatever mistake you did will take months for your plant to recover from. It's not going to happen overnight, and no amount of special juices will make your plant come back faster. And that is reason number 2. Reason number 3, guys, is going to be water. When you take a small plant and then you put it in a bigger container, like this one right here, this new potting mix right here, guys, your plant doesn't have any roots in this new potting mix. Now the root ball of your plant is going to be in the center. So what happens is people flood everything, they wet everything, and then they forget about the plant for a few days. Now you have to understand, that root ball of that plant will still dry out faster than the surrounding soil or potting mix, and it will still die even with the surrounding soil being wet, because it has no roots in the soil yet to drink that water. So when you're potting your plants or putting them in the ground, like this Puerto Rican guava that I have here in the ground, for the first summer you want to concentrate right where your roots are, right there, not over here. So this plant right here, when it was in the container, I was watering twice a day, because twice a day in the container it was drying out on me 50%. If you want to learn how to water your plants in containers, I have another video where I talk about specifically how to water your plants in containers. Now, just because I put it in the ground doesn't mean this plant will be able to go days without water. I still have to water daily because all the roots are right here. They're not right here. So when you uppot your plant, make sure you water the root ball only. Don't worry about the soil around it. And that's the main mistake people make. They put their plants in a bigger container, they soak everything, and they forget about it for several days. Now, think about it. This plant right here in the container, I was watering twice a day, because twice a day it was drying out on me 50%. So if I put it in the ground, soak everything, and forget about it for a few days, what do you think is going to happen? This plant is going to die. So you got to make sure you water right where your roots are, and most plants will take about 6 months to a year to grow roots into the new soil or into the new potting mix. And that is reason number 3. That is how most people actually kill their plants when they are potting in bigger containers. Now you have to understand, guys, everybody's situation is going to be different. Here in my area, if you miss watering your plants for a few hours and they go dry, they are dead, most plants. In other areas where the temperatures are not that extreme in the summertime, you have a lot more humidity in the air, your plants will last a lot longer without water. But in my area, all it takes a few hours. So if you buy, or if you get one of my plants that I have been watering 3 to 4 times a day, you put it in the ground, you soak everything, and you forget about it even for 2-3 days, your plant is dead. And that is the reason why it died. That is not transplant shock. That is your fault. You can call it whatever you want, but yeah, that's another myth. Reason number 4, technically you can call it transplant shock, and it's not that common, and I can tell you hardly ever we experience this at the nursery anymore. We did at the beginning because we didn't know. Now what that means, guys, is the root system of some plants is going to be extremely sensitive, where if you even break off a few roots, your plant is dead. Now this plant right here that you see in front of me, this is a blue jaboticaba, also known as false jaboticaba or vexillor. Now this plant right here has an extremely sensitive root system. Just by handling the plant, and if you twist the canopy wrong, you break off some of the roots, this entire tree right here, which is at least 10 years old, will still die regardless of how old it was in the container. So this plant right here will die for the same reasons of reason number 1, damage to the root system. But for some reason, this plant right here, the root system, it's a lot more sensitive than any other plant. Out of the thousands of plants that I have here at the nursery, only 2 plants I can think of are this sensitive. It's gonna be this plant right here behind me and papaya plants. They just don't like to be transplanted, and when you do, most plants will die. So when transplanting this, guys, you have to be extremely careful. You have to make sure you do not disturb the root system. Let it dry a little longer than normal so it makes it easier to slide out of the container. Never tickle the roots, guys, and you may have success. But out of all the plants that I have here, guys, only these 2 plants here are root sensitive, and technically they are dying because you're breaking off the roots, but they happen to be more sensitive, so they die out a lot easier. As you can see, guys, transplant shock, it's not really what it sounds like. A lot of people assume most plants have very sensitive roots. In my experience, most plants do not. Like I said, out of all the plants that we have here, guys, only 2 plants I can think of have sensitive roots like that. And most times these plants are gonna have fibrous, shallow roots where the roots you can barely even see them, and they are extremely easy to break off. So here at the nursery, guys, we don't experience transplant shock, and we uppot, like I said, a few thousand plants every year. The only time they die is usually for reason number 3, and that is because sometimes the drip lines that we have in the containers, the birds pulling out, or the plants fall over in the wind and then they don't get water, and when it's 120 degrees, those plants will die in a single afternoon. And that is what you call transplant shock. So now when your plant dies right after you uppotted it, it's because of something you did. I'm sorry to say that, let's just be honest, guys, something you did. It's not because of the plant's fault. And but you know, most nurseries you call, usually after you kill your plant, they will always tell you it's transplant shock, because they don't really understand what's going on, because most nurseries don't even grow their own plants. If you just look around, guys, most of them, all they do is buy and resell plants, and then they don't even know how to grow their own stuff. And it's just a reality of, you know, of how everything works now. Here, I'm not gonna lie to you, we buy and resell a lot of plants, but as you guys have seen in our videos, we also grow a lot of our plants because we enjoy growing plants here, and we like to learn how to grow them, because a lot of our plants here have a specific growing requirements, and unless you grow the plants personally, there's no way you're going to be able to learn, because information about those plants, there's no way you can find online. But anyways, guys, hopefully this helps you out. Hopefully this clears this myth of transplant shock. And you know, if, as always, if you have any questions, go ahead and comment below. Don't forget to subscribe, click the bell, and I will see you next time.